Ryan was a human explorer who traveled alone in a small silver ship that moved through the endless space. He had visited many strange planets, but the one he found today looked different from all others. Its sky was soft green and the ground was covered with glowing plants that swayed, even though there was no wind. He stepped out of his ship and felt the warm soil under his boots. He had landed near a forest, where tall, crystal-like trees reached high toward the green sky. The air was fresh and carried a sweet smell that reminded him of honey. Ryan walked slowly into the forest. The plants gave off a gentle light and small flying creatures like tiny stars moved around them. He could hear a faint humming sound from the ground, as if the planet itself was alive. He had never seen anything so calm and peaceful. Still, he knew that a new world could be full of surprises and danger. He kept his hand near his small tool bag, ready for anything. After some time, he reached a clear stream, where the water sparkled in bright colors. He knelt to fill his bottle when he heard soft steps behind him. Turning slowly, he saw a figure standing under a glowing tree. It was a woman, but not a human. Her skin was pale silver, and her eyes shone like blue crystals. Her hair was long and moved slightly, as if touched by an unseen breeze. The most striking thing was that she had no arms. Ryan stood still, unsure how to speak or act. The woman looked at him without fear. Then she spoke in a calm, gentle voice. "Welcome, traveler, I am Luma." Her words were strange, yet Ryan understood them as if the sound went directly into his mind. He replied with a small bow. "I am Ryan, from Earth. I mean no harm. I only explore." Luma smiled and stepped closer. Without arms, she still moved with grace and balance. She bent down and picked a round fruit from the ground using her foot. She tossed it lightly into the air and caught it with her mouth. Then she bit it and chewed slowly. Ryan watched in surprise. She noticed his look and said, "I have no arms, but I can still do many things with my mouth and feet." Ryan wanted to ask how, but before he spoke, she moved to a flat rock nearby. There, she used her foot to take a small woven basket from her side and placed it on the rock. With her mouth, she took out thin strands of plant fiber and began to weave them together. Her head moved with slow skill, twisting and tying the fibers into a strong braid. Her lips and teeth worked like fine tools. It was like watching an artist at work. After a while, she placed the braid aside and looked at Ryan. "We live here without arms, yet we survive well. We learn from birth to use what we have and make it enough. Some outsiders pity us, but we do not pity ourselves. We are proud of what we can do." Ryan nodded. He felt respect for her skill and her calm pride. In his travels, he had met many alien beings, but none like her. Most relied on machines or special tools, but Luma seemed to need nothing more than her own body and mind. He wanted to learn more about her people and how they lived. She invited him to follow her. They walked deeper into the glowing forest until they reached a small open area. There were many dome-shaped homes made from woven plant fibers and crystal pieces. Children played near a shallow pond, kicking small floating fruits with their feet and catching them in their mouths. Older people sat together, making baskets, nets, and tools with their mouths, while their feet held the materials steady. The air was filled with soft laughter and the rustle of weaving. Ryan felt a strange warmth in his chest. These people were not weak. They had adapted to their way of life and turned what others might call a weakness into a strength. He thought about how humans always depended on their hands for almost everything. Here was proof that life could still be full and creative without them. Luma led him to her home, where a small cooking fire burned. She used her mouth to place herbs into a pot and stirred it with a long stick held in her teeth. The smell was rich and sweet. Ryan sat nearby, watching every movement. He asked if she had always lived on this planet. She nodded and said her people had been here for many generations, they believed. The forest gave them life, and in return, they must protect it. As night began to fall, the forest lights grew brighter. The sky turned deep blue, and the crystal trees glowed like lanterns. Small winged creatures danced in the air, leaving trails of light. Ryan looked up in wonder. He felt far from home, yet safe in this place. Luma brought him a wooden bowl of warm food. She placed it on the ground with her foot and smiled. "You are welcome to stay as long as you need, traveler." Ryan thanked her and tasted the food. It was sweet and soft with a gentle spice that warmed his mouth. He thought about how she had made all of this without arms and felt a deep respect for her and her people. That night, he sat outside her home watching the lights of the forest. He knew this meeting was the start of something important. He had come here only to explore, but now he felt there was much to learn from the armless woman who could work with her mouth and feet better than most humans could, with both hands. The next morning, Ryan woke to the sound of gentle voices outside. The village was alive with movement. Children ran barefoot over the soft, glowing grass, chasing small flying creatures that glimmered like tiny lanterns. Older villagers were already busy at work. Some carried baskets with their feet, while others shaped pottery using their toes and balanced the clay while carving it with tools held in their mouths. Everywhere he looked, he saw skill and balance. Luma greeted him with a warm smile. She carried a flat tray balanced on her head. On the tray were fresh fruits and warm bread made from forest grain. She bent her neck and lowered the tray to the ground with smooth control. She then used her foot to slide the food toward him. "Breakfast. For you, traveler?" she said in her calm voice. Ryan thanked her and took a bite of the soft bread. It was fresh and sweet and reminded him of warm mornings back on Earth. As they ate, Ryan asked her how she had learned to use her mouth and feet so well. She told him that every child in the village began training from the time they could walk. They played games that built strength in their legs and feet and learned to grip and hold objects with their toes. They were taught to speak clearly even. While holding tools in their mouths, they practiced weaving, writing, and even painting with brushes held between their teeth. By the time they were grown, their skill was as natural as breathing. Luma invited Ryan to watch a training session for the young ones. In a shaded clearing, a group of children sat in a circle. They were working with strands of bright green plant fiber. Each child held the fiber steady with their toes while weaving it into small shapes using their mouths. One made a tiny basket. Another made a rope that looked as strong as metal. The children laughed and encouraged each other. Their teachers guided them with patience, never rushing. The work, Ryan was amazed at how quickly the children moved. The fibers twisted and locked into place with perfect accuracy. He realized that this was more than just skill. It was a way of life built over countless generations. These people had turned what might seem like a limitation into an art. Luma then showed him her own work. She took him to a small workshop near the edge of the village. There were shelves filled with tools made from wood, bone, and crystal. Each tool had a handle shaped to be held by toes or by teeth. She picked up a long needle-like tool with her mouth and began sewing a soft fabric made from plant fibers. Her head moved gently, guiding the thread through the material. Her toes held the cloth steady without slipping. Within minutes, a neat pattern appeared on the surface. Ryan leaned closer to watch. "Your skill is amazing," he said. Luma smiled without pausing. "We only do what we must to live well," she replied. Her voice carried no pride or boastfulness. It was simply the truth of their life. After a while, Luma asked Ryan if humans could work like this. Ryan thought about it. Humans had strong hands and fingers, but their feet were not trained for such delicate work. Most humans would find it hard even to pick up a coin with their toes, but he also knew that humans could learn almost anything with enough time and effort. Perhaps if they had to live without hands, they would adapt in their own way. Luma nodded. Every being can change when needed, she said. The body can learn to do what the heart believes is possible. It only takes time and patience. They left the workshop and walked toward the stream Rian had seen the day before. The water shimmered in many colors under the soft green sky. Luma picked a flat stone with her foot and skipped it across the surface. It jumped 6 times before sinking. She laughed like a child and handed Ryan another stone using her toes. He tried, but the stone sank after only 2 jumps. They both laughed together. As the day passed, Ryan felt more and more at home in the village. He helped carry supplies from one home to another. Since he had hands, the work was easy for him, but he noticed the villagers could carry even heavy loads with their feet balanced perfectly. They moved as if their bodies were built for this life from the beginning. In the evening, Luma took him to a gathering near the central fire. The villagers sat in a wide circle under the glowing crystal trees. One elder began to tell a story in a soft, singing voice. It was about the first ancestors who came to this planet long ago. They had arms in the beginning, but a great sickness had taken them away. Instead of giving up, they learned new ways to survive. The forest gave them food, water, and shelter. In return, they promised never to harm it. The elder's voice blended with the sound of the forest. It was a story of courage and change. Ryan listened with deep respect. He realized that Luma's people were not just survivors. They were masters of adaptation. They had turned what might be a tragedy into a culture of strength, skill, and beauty. When the story ended, the villagers began to sing. The music was soft and flowing like the stream. Some tapped the rhythm with their toes on hollow logs, while others played flutes held in their mouths. The sound filled the forest. With gentle harmony, Rian felt the music flow through him, and for the first time in many years he felt truly at peace. That night, Luma walked with him back to her home. She spoke of her dream to teach other worlds about her people's ways, not to replace their own skills, but to show them that life had more paths than one. Ryan agreed and told her that humans could learn much from her. He promised to remember every detail of what he had seen and heard. As they sat outside watching the crystal trees sway in the night breeze, Ryan thought about the journey ahead. He had come here searching for knowledge of the stars. Instead, he had found knowledge of the heart and the will. He knew his time here was not over. There was still more to learn from Luma and her people. And perhaps one day he could share their gift of skill with the rest of humanity. Ryan woke early the next day and stepped outside to feel the warm, soft light of the green sky on his face. The village was calm and peaceful, just like the mornings before. He could hear the gentle rustle of crystal leaves in the wind and the sound of children laughing near the pond. He thought this world was the most peaceful place he had ever seen. But as he walked toward the stream to fill his water bottle, he noticed something strange. The ground beneath his feet trembled slightly, as if something heavy was moving far away. He stopped and listened. The trembling came again, and this time it was stronger. Even the water in the stream rippled in small circles. Bird-like creatures flew up from the trees, making loud calls. Ryan frowned. This did not feel like anything natural. Luma appeared beside him, moving quickly. Her calm face now showed worry. She asked if he felt the shaking. Ryan nodded. "It is not the forest," she said in a low voice. "It is the machines from the outsiders." Ryan followed her as she led him through the forest. They moved swiftly but quietly. The glow of the plants seemed dimmer in this part of the forest, and the humming sound of life that Ryan had noticed before was weaker. Soon they reached a high ridge of crystal rock. From there, Rian could see far into the distance. What he saw made his chest tighten. Large mechanical drills and crawler machines were tearing through the land. They were breaking apart the crystal trees and scooping out huge piles of earth. Bright lights flashed from the machines, and strange sparks flew into the air. The sound of grinding metal and breaking stone echoed through the forest. The ground shook again as another section of earth collapsed into a deep pit. Luma explained that these were mining machines from a powerful alien corporation. They had come before, but always far away from the village. Now they were getting closer. She said the machines were searching for rare energy crystals hidden deep under the forest floor. If they kept digging, they would poison the streams and destroy the roots of the crystal trees. Without the trees and clean water, her people would not survive. Ryan felt a rush of anger. He had seen things like this before on other planets. Outsiders, taking what they wanted without care for those who lived there. He asked why her people did not fight back. Luma shook her head. "We have no weapons and no war machines," she said. "We have always lived in peace. We cannot match their strength in battle. But if the forest dies, our way of life will die." Ryan looked at the machines again. They were huge and heavily armored, but he also noticed the mining crew was small. Mostly automated drones ran the operation with only a few living workers. If someone could reach the control center and shut it down, the machines would stop. But the control center was in the middle of the mining site, surrounded by drones and scanners. Luma saw his eyes fixed on the control tower and asked what he was thinking. Ryan said they needed to get inside and stop it from working. She hesitated, then gave a slow nod. Her mouth pressed into a thin line. She knew the risk, but she also knew they had no other choice back in the village. Luma called a meeting. The elders listened as Ryan explained what he had seen and what might happen if the mining continued. The villagers sat in silence as the truth sank in. They had never fought anyone before, but the danger was too great to ignore. One elder asked how they could even get past the security. Ryan was about to answer when Luma spoke. "I will go," she said firmly. Ryan looked at her in surprise. The elders looked at her with worry, but she continued. "I can move where others cannot. I can slip through vents and narrow spaces using my mouth and feet. I can work with small wires and locks. Machines cannot sense me the way they sense others, and I will not need heavy tools." Ryan felt both relief and fear at her words. He knew she was right. Her skill gave her an advantage. But it was dangerous work, and if she was caught, there would be no second chance. He said he would go with her to create a distraction while she worked. Together, they could make it. The elders agreed, though their faces were still heavy with worry. They gave Luma a pouch of strong woven cords and small crystal tools. The cords were light but strong enough to hold heavy weight. The tools were made to be gripped in the mouth and worked with precision. They had been passed down from builders of the old times. That night, Luma and Ryan sat by the fire planning. They would move before dawn, when the machines were quietest. Ryan would set up false energy signals far from the mining site to draw the drones away. While the drones chased the false signals, Luma would sneak into the control tower. She would disable the main system and cut the power to the drills. Then they would escape back through the forest before the crew could restart anything. Luma listened carefully to every step. Her eyes were steady. Ryan could see there was no fear in her only focus. She had lived her whole life using skill instead of force. Now that skill would have to save her people. When the fire burned low, they both rested. The forest outside whispered, with the sound of night. Far away, the faint rumble of the mining machines still reached their ears. Ryan closed his eyes, but sleep was slow to come. He thought about how quickly peace could be broken, and how a woman with no arms might be the only one who could save this world. Before the first light touched the green sky, Ryan was already awake. He sat outside the small woven home and watched the soft glow of the crystal trees fade into the coming dawn. The air was cool and still, but far away. The low hum of the mining machines could be heard like a warning drum. He knew the day ahead would decide the future of this forest and the people who lived here. Luma stepped out quietly. Her long hair caught the light of the waking sky, and her silver skin seemed to shine. In the early glow, around her neck hung a small pouch made of strong woven fiber. Inside were the crystal tools and cords given to her by the elders. She carried nothing else, for she needed to move fast and light. They walked to the edge of the village, where a group of elders waited. Each elder placed a hand gently on Ryan's shoulder and bowed their heads to Luma. They did not speak many words, but their eyes told the truth. They trusted her. They believed in her skill more than in any weapon. Ryan spread out a rough map on the ground. It was made from thin bark and marked with lines of red and green dye. The red marks showed the location of the mining site and the patrol routes of the drones. The green marks showed the forest paths that could be used to move unseen. He explained the plan once more. I will set up false energy signals far to the south. He said, these will confuse the scanners of the drones and pull them away from the main site. Once they leave the control tower unguarded, Luma will move in through the vents on the east side. The vents are small and high above the ground, but she can climb to them with her cords. Inside, she will find the main control unit and cut the power. If all goes well, the drills will stop before they can do more harm. The elders nodded slowly. They knew the plan was risky, but they also knew there was no other way. One elder gave Luma a small crystal charm tied to a thin cord. It was a symbol of safe return, worn by those who left the village. For dangerous journeys, she accepted it with a slight bow and placed it around her neck. With the plan set, they began to move. The forest was still dim, and the glow from the plants cast strange shadows on the ground. Ryan led the way, following the green-marked paths. They moved quickly but silently, avoiding the areas where the ground was too open. Luma's steps were light and careful. She used her toes to feel the ground ahead, making sure not to step on dry branches that might snap. By the time they reached the southern ridge, the sky was brighter. From here, Ryan could see the thin smoke rising from the mining site in the distance. The hum of the machines was louder now. He could almost feel the vibration through the rocks beneath his feet. This is where we split, he said. He gave Luma a quick nod, and she returned it without words. Then he turned and moved down toward the southern forest to begin his part of the plan. Luma stayed hidden behind the ridge until Ryan disappeared into the trees. She waited patiently, listening to the sounds around her. Her breathing was slow and steady. Then a faint change in the hum reached her ears. A new signal had been picked up by the drones. It was Ryan's work. Within moments, she saw several drones lift into the air and speed south toward the false signals. Now was her moment. She moved quickly down the ridge, staying low among the crystal rocks. The ground here was broken and scattered with sharp edges, but her bare feet found each foothold with ease. She reached the outer edge of the mining site, where piles of broken crystal trees lay in heaps. The air smelled of hot metal and dust. The noise from the drills was deafening. She kept moving along the shadows cast by the tall mining machines until she reached the east side of the control tower. The tower was made of black metal and glass with bright panels that blinked in shifting colors. Just as Ryan had said, there were vents high above the ground covered by thin metal bars. She took out a cord from her pouch and looped it over a protruding beam. Using her feet and teeth, she began to climb. Her climb was slow but steady. Every movement had to be exact, for the metal surface was slick and hot from the machines. When she reached the vent, she gripped the thin bars with her toes and bit down on a small cutting tool from her pouch. The tool made no loud sound as it sliced through the bars. One by one, the pieces fell silently into her other foot, which she used to hold them away from the vent opening. When the path was clear, she slipped inside. The air inside. The vent was warm and smelled of oil. She moved on her stomach, pushing forward with her legs and guiding herself with her head. Her pouch rested against her chest and did not make a sound. She could hear the faint hum of machinery growing louder as she moved deeper into the tower. After several turns, the vent opened into a small maintenance room. She lowered herself quietly onto the floor. There was no one inside. The walls were lined with cables and panels covered in blinking lights. She knew the control unit would be just beyond the next door. She paused and listened. Faint voices came from the other side of the door, but they were moving away. When the sound faded, she used her mouth to pull a thin wire from her pouch and loop it around the door handle. She pulled gently with her foot, and the door swung open just enough for her to slip through. There it was, the main control. Panel stood against the far wall, covered in glowing screens and switches. The hum of the machines outside was loud here. She moved toward it quickly and began to work. Her mouth gripped a small crystal tool that could cut through the protective casing without setting off alarms. Her feet held the panel steady as she worked the edges loose. The casing came away and revealed a cluster of shining wires. She studied them for a moment, then began to cut and twist them in a specific order. Her movements were precise and fast. Each wire disconnected with a faint click. One after another, the lights on the panel began to dim. The hum of the drills outside grew weaker until it stopped completely. The sudden silence felt heavy in the air. Luma breathed deeply and stepped back. The heart of the mining operation was now still. She turned toward the vent and prepared to leave, knowing that the next moments would decide whether she could escape unseen or not. The heavy silence in the control room felt strange. After the endless grinding of the mining drills, Luma stayed still for a moment, listening to the quiet. She could hear only the faint hum of smaller machines far away. The main power was gone, and the great drills had stopped. She knew she had only a short time before someone came to check. She quickly slipped her tools back into the pouch and returned to the vent. Her toes gripped the edge, and she pulled herself inside, using her legs to push forward. The air in the vent was warmer now. She could hear footsteps in the distance. The mining crew had noticed the change. Luma moved faster. Her body slid over the smooth metal as she pushed herself forward with strong kicks. She took care not to make noise. Every sound echoed in the narrow vent like a drum. At last, she reached the opening where she had cut the bars earlier. She peeked out carefully. Below her, the ground was still. The drones that had been flying around earlier were gone, chasing Rian's false signals. But she knew they would be back soon. She looped the climbing cord over the same beam and lowered herself down slowly. Her feet found small holds along the metal wall as she moved down. Once on the ground, she pulled the cord free and tucked it into her pouch. She kept close to the shadow of the tower and began to move toward the ridge. The piles of broken crystal trees gave her cover, but also made the path uneven and sharp. Her bare feet avoided the worst edges, but each step had to be chosen carefully. Halfway across the open ground, she heard a distant whirring sound. Her head turned sharply. Far away on the horizon, several dark shapes were rising into the air. The drones were returning. She crouched low behind a broken section of tree trunk. The drones moved fast, scanning the ground with bright beams of light. She waited for them to pass, but one of the beams swung dangerously close to her hiding place. She pressed herself against the trunk, holding her breath. The beam moved away, and she used the moment to dash to the next cover. Her movements were quick and light. She never stayed in one place for more than a few heartbeats. The sound of the drones was getting louder. She knew she could not hide. Forever. Meanwhile, far to the south, Ryan was still running between the trees carrying his signal device. The false readings it sent out were bright enough to confuse the scanners, but the drones were starting to spread out, searching for the real source. He knew they would soon turn back toward the mining site. He hoped Luma had already escaped back near the site. Luma finally reached the edge of the broken land. Ahead was the forest. If she could just get under the cover of the glowing trees, she could lose the drones. She waited for another gap in the search beams, then ran as fast as her legs could carry her. She reached the first trees just as a beam of light swept over the ground behind her. A loud mechanical voice echoed through the air, calling out in a language she did not know. She pushed forward deeper into the forest, her feet moving silently over the soft, glowing grass. The beams of light struggled to pierce the thick crystal branches above. The drones followed. But their speed was slower under the heavy cover. They tried to circle around, but the forest paths twisted and split into many directions. Luma moved as if she knew every root and stone by heart. She slipped through narrow gaps and over hidden ridges until the sound of the drones grew faint. At last she reached a small clearing where Ryan was waiting. He looked relieved when he saw her appear from the shadows. "You made it," he said quickly. Luma nodded, her breathing steady despite the run. "The drills are silent," she said. Ryan smiled for the first time since they had started the mission. They did not stop to rest. Both knew the drones might still be searching. Together, they moved along the safest forest paths, heading toward the village. The green light of the sky was fading into a darker shade. As the day moved on, by the time they reached the village, the people were gathered near the central fire. When they saw Luma and Ryan return unharmed, a wave of quiet relief spread through the crowd. The elders stepped forward, their eyes shining with gratitude. One of them asked if the forest was safe. Now Luma explained that the machines had stopped, but the miners might return if they repaired the damage. They would need to remain watchful. The villagers agreed. They would keep careful watch on the outer ridges and send signals if any machines were seen again. For now, the forest was safe, and the streams would keep flowing clean. That night, a celebration filled the village. It was not a loud or wild celebration, but one of deep joy. The people sang the old songs and told the story of what had happened. They spoke of Luma's courage and Ryan's help. Children listened with wide eyes, imagining the silent climb into the enemy tower and the clever trick that stopped the great drills. Luma sat near the fire with Ryan beside her. She looked around at her people, their faces glowing in the soft firelight. For a moment, she let herself feel the warmth of victory, but deep inside, she knew the danger had not ended completely. The outsiders might try again, and next time they might be more careful. Ryan seemed to read her thoughts. "We have won this battle," he said quietly. "But the war for your forest may not be over." Luma nodded. "Then we will be ready," she replied. The fire crackled softly, and the songs continued late into the night. Above the village, the crystal trees swayed in the gentle wind, their glow bright against the dark sky. For now, the forest was alive and free. The morning sun rose slowly over the glowing forest. Soft light touched the crystal trees and made them sparkle like stars. The village was calm and peaceful once more. Ryan walked among the homes carrying small baskets of fresh fruits. The people smiled as he passed. They were grateful and hopeful. Luma stood near the edge of the village, looking toward the distant ridge where the mining machines had been. She felt the quiet strength of the forest around her. Her people were safe now because of what she had done. But she also knew the peace might last only a little while longer. News had spread quickly that the great drills had stopped. The alien corporation decided to pull back their machines and crews for now. They said the planet was not worth the trouble if the energy crystals could not be mined safely. The village elders believed this was a victory, but also a warning. They had won the battle, but the war to protect their home would continue. Ryan sat beside Luma under a tall, crystal tree. He looked at her with deep respect and said, "You did something no one else could do. Your courage and skill saved this forest and your people." Luma smiled but shook her head. "It was not only me," she said softly. "It was the spirit of all, of us who never gave up. The forest gave us life, and we promised to protect it. We found strength in what some see as weakness." The two friends walked through the village where children played and adults worked with renewed hope. The people continued their crafts using mouth and feet baskets. Cloth and tools were made with careful hands turned into mouths and toes. The village was alive with gentle sounds of weaving and laughter. Ryan asked Luma if she would teach him more about their ways. She agreed and took him to the workshop where she showed him how to weave thin fibers with mouth and toes. She explained the careful balance and patience needed to create strong and beautiful objects. Ryan listened closely and tried to copy her movements. Though he had hands, he learned to appreciate the new skills and the deep meaning behind them. Days passed slowly but full of learning. Ryan helped carry water and prepare food. He shared stories from Earth and the many worlds he had visited. The villagers were curious and welcomed the new knowledge they saw that even with different strengths, all beings could learn from each other. One evening, the elders gathered around the fire. They spoke quietly about the future and how to prepare for any return of the mining machines. They planned to watch the forest closely and send messages to other worlds for help if needed. The village had grown stronger in spirit and skill. They were ready to defend their home in new ways without violence. Luma stood and looked at the stars shining above the crystal trees. She thought about the promise she had made to protect the forest. Her heart was calm but ready. She knew that true strength was not just in weapons or machines, but in the courage to keep trying and the wisdom to find peace. Ryan joined her and said, "Your people are an example to all. They show that even without arms, without guns or machines, life can be full and strong. You teach us that the mind and heart are the greatest tools." Luma smiled warmly. "Thank you," she said. "May all who listen find the courage to protect what is precious without harming others." The night grew deeper and the village settled into a peaceful rest. The glowing trees whispered softly in the breeze. For now, the forest was safe and alive, and the story of the armless woman who worked with her mouth and feet would be told for many generations to come. The days passed peacefully in the glowing forest. Ryan prepared to leave the village and continue his journey among the stars. Before he left, he asked Luma to teach him more about her people's way of life. She agreed happily and spent many hours showing him how to weave, write, and move with skill using only mouth and feet. Ryan took careful notes and made drawings on thin bark. He knew that what he learned here was special. It was not just about survival, but about hope and strength in the face of hardship. He thought of how humans could learn from this example. How many worlds might need to find new ways to live and grow strong without weapons or heavy tools? On the last night before his departure, the villagers gathered for a quiet ceremony. They sang soft songs and told stories of their ancestors. Luma stood before the crowd and spoke clearly. She said that every being could change and grow stronger if they believed in themselves. She told how her people had lost their arms but gained new ways to live and create. She asked everyone to remember that strength was more than power. It was kindness, courage, and creativity. Ryan felt his heart fill with hope. He knew this story must be shared across the stars. He promised Luma that he would carry their lessons to other worlds, that he would tell the story of the armless woman who worked with her mouth and feet, the story of a people who saved their home without fighting or hate when morning came. Ryan said goodbye to Luma and the villagers. He stepped into his silver ship and looked back at the glowing trees one last time. He felt the warmth of friendship and the power of new knowledge. As his ship rose into the sky, he thought about the future. How many more worlds could learn from this small village and its brave people? The stars stretched out before him, endless and bright. Ryan smiled and set his course for the next adventure. He knew that no matter where he went, he would carry with him the strength of the forest and the spirit of the armless woman. And so the story traveled far and wide, inspiring others to find courage and creativity in their own lives, showing that even when faced with great loss, hope and skill could build a better future for all.